One of the things that I'm requested at to probably make the most for my kids is pretzel bites. So it's something that I make out of bread that's can be done either with the bread flour or all-purpose. For this one, I use a half and half mixture. Of course, you also need some water inside of that, but that's the basic ingredients for the bulk of it. For pretzel bites, there is some salt to activate the yeast, and along with a little bit of sugar to kind of feed the yeast. And then, of course, the scale. Very important to make sure you have some more precise measurements as you're setting up your pretzel bites. Oh, and one more thing I'd love to add in is a little bit of chia seed. That's fantastic tasting. It gives a little bit more of an artesian flavor to the pretzel bites. So as I mix all this together in a bowl, it forms a kind of a sticky batter. And I just let it mix until it pulls away from the sides and it starts to kind of form one big gigantic dough ball. Now this is actually a little bit too wet. You can tell that it's sticking just about everywhere. It doesn't really affects the taste of it a little bit, but more of it's just handling. Wet dough is really tough to handle. It sticks to everything. So I take a guess, add a little more flour into this, and give it another whirl. Speed the video up here. And we'll check this one. You can see it really kind of sticking to the dough hook, which means that this is still just a little bit too sticky. It's going to be hard to do anything with, or even get out of the bowl. So I'll add in a little bit more flour to that. Yep, that looks good. And then give that another mix. Fast forward. Once again, making sure everything is coming off the side of it. Get it as well mixed as we can. And as you can see that it's a little bit easier to come off the dough hook. I just, over the years, have found that you kind of get an idea, kind of a touch for what you're going to be able to handle and what you're not. So now that that's all ready to go, this next part, not necessarily something that's part of the original recipe for making the pretzel bites, but it's something that I tend to do with some of my other breads, and that is to, after everything's mixed up, just to kind of lay it out. Get all that out of the bowl, and then what I do is I'll just kind of smack it, rub it around on the countertop there that of course is cleaned. And then I'll fold it over on itself a couple different times, and then I just kind of shape the dough. The shaping the dough helps it a little bit easier to handle a little bit later. It also helps build some of the gluten network inside that bread. It'll help strengthen it so it'll hold its shape a little bit better. So once I have the bread, I'll cover it, let it sit off to the side for about half an hour. And while I'm doing that, I'll go ahead and preheat the oven. We're going to set it at 475. Which means I'm going to raise the temperature of the kitchen by about 30 degrees. Now this is the secret ingredient to get those pretzel bites to have a kind of a really crisp outside to it, get a golden brown color to it. And that's just going to be baking soda. And I take some water that I have boiled there. I'm just going to mix that boiling water and baking soda. Get a nice little effect there. Steam. Then I'll mix that together so that you can't really see the baking soda in there. I'll have a slight cloud. But this will be my dipping ingredient for all of the pretzel bites. And like I said, that'll give it a golden brown color and flavor to it. Clean off from countertop from rolling around dough on it. And I'll take the dough after it's, like I said, about set for about half an hour. And I'll pull that out of the bowl. This is where if you have sticky dough, it takes a long time to get it out of the bowl and to actually do anything with it. But here, unlike the first time, where I was just kind of lightly shaping it, I'm actually going to stretch the dough out here. I'm going to pull it all the different corners, shape it out into almost like a pizza look here. And then I'll start folding it over onto itself, burrito-like, from all the different ends. And then I'll get a nice tight dough. But I'm also trying to be a little careful with it. I don't want to tear up the gluten network that's been developing so nicely on that. So I'll roll it out, shape a little bit. And this is actually a double batch of pretzel bites. It's a pretty big dough ball there. So I'll cut that in half. And I'll set aside a half there that's part of my second batch. And then I just start dividing this into something that's a little more manageable to actually start making the pretzel bites. So I'll divide it in half, and then divide it in half again. This is not an exact science. And divide it in half again, until I get roughly 4 different pieces out of that. So I'll take one of these pieces, and I'll just start rolling it out on the table. And as I'm rolling it out, what I'm doing is I'm actually starting from the inside, and I'll be pushing my hands outwards as I'm doing that roll to kind of stretch it out into kind of a long string. And then once I get it to a pretty good width there, I'll just start cutting it up in little finger-sized bites. And what I'll do is I'll roll these right into the dip that I had prepared earlier with the baking soda. So I'll make sure these are nicely coated. Give them a little bath. And then start laying them out on the tray. And I'll just start doing the same thing again, rolling those out, nice little strings. Sometimes I get 4 pretzel bites, sometimes I get 6, sometimes I get 8. Like I said, I'm not really too precise. Once I get a full tray on that, I'll go ahead and put it in the oven, middle rack. And we'll let that cook about 6 minutes. And while it's cooking, I'm rolling out more. There you can see I got a few more out of that roll. Start placing them out on the tray, roll out some more. And I'll pull these out. Now it's time to roll these over. I used to really kind of struggle with how do I roll all these pretzel bites, and then I realized they stick pretty well to that parchment paper, so I just flipped the whole parchment paper. It's a whole lot easier. Amazing when you get older how much you learn stuff like this. Alright, so now for the coating of this, I'm going to use some coarse sea salt. And it's time to put a little butter, melt that in, and we're going to top off. Once the pretzels are actually cooked, we're going to put the butter right on top. It's kind of a coating. Now the recipe calls for, of course, a healthy portion of butter, which is about there. Yeah, right about there. That just doesn't look like much butter. So we'll double it. We're in the Midwest. We like butter. Alright, time to check on the pretzel bites here. It's been about another 5 or 6 minutes. We'll flip those back over. Nice, easy peasy. You can see that those look a little pale. Probably could use more cooking. You actually want your bread dough to get about 210 degrees. So I do have a thermometer that I'll check these if I need to. That I can just tell that's going to need some more cooking. Couple more minutes, pull those back out, and that's what we're looking for. Nice golden brown color to it. Time to put on the good stuff. A little bit of butter. Okay, a whole lot of butter. So I'll just, not going overboard, I'll just lightly tap that butter on each little piece. Go back over, make sure they're fairly well coated. I do want the salt to somewhat stick to them. And then there it is. That is actually all that's left after a double batch when my kids got a hold of them.